Welcome to this edition of When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine, a discussion of sustainable living and what that means to you and me. Coming to you from Studio B, WOUB Radio. I am Jay Warmke.
And I'm Annie Warmke.
You certainly are. And today we're joined by Natalia Rudiak, who is the Special Projects Director for ReImagine Appalachia. And we're going to talk about community benefit agreements, or not all projects are created equal. And welcome, Natalia.
I keep wanting to call you Polish Natalie. Now.
Natalia.
Polish.
So
yeah,
a good Italian name, right?
Or Ukrainian.
It's a pretty international name. So except in the US, so I can travel and it's pronounceable by everybody except in English.
Mm-hmm. Well, welcome. So why don't we first off try and define what exactly is a community benefit agreement? That was a term that was new to me.
Well, let's back up for 1 second, because some people may not know anything about ReImagine Appalachia or Appalachia, wherever you're from, depends on how you pronounce it. Just to say a little bit about that in your role there.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me back. I really appreciate that. So ReImagine Appalachia is a 4-state coalition, and we work across the Appalachian regions of Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and part of Kentucky. And we, like I said, are a coalition. So we have over 100 organizations that are a part of us. And what sets us apart and makes us unique is that we have a lot of groups under the umbrella that may not traditionally speak to one another. So labor unions, climate activists, environmental groups, racial justice organizations, manufacturing businesses, even those groups have associations and networks. And so we also have over 100 local elected officials and faith-based leaders who all came together out of a recognition that the current direction of the economy was not working for most Appalachians, and that we needed to build a sustainable economy that works for us, that works for workers and the environment and communities. And so we were really big advocates for the 2 infrastructure bills that recently passed. In November of 2021, we saw the bipartisan infrastructure law. And in August of 2022, we saw the Inflation Reduction Act, all with billions, dare I say, over $1 trillion in infrastructure money, everything from traditional public works projects like roads and bridges to really innovative stuff, including clean manufacturing, huge environmental justice, pollution reduction grants, you name it, it's probably in there. So we are really excited to see tons of our priorities in there, including cleaning up abandoned mine lands, and again, a lot more on manufacturing and job creation. So now we're into the process of quote unquote winning the win. Right? So we won a lot of money, but guess what? That money is spread all across the United States of America. And so now our job, I would say our collective job, for those of us who are interested in these issues and live in this region, and even if you're not, even if you live in another place, but you're from here, or you're actually concerned about Appalachia as an influence and a model for the entire rest of the country or world, please join us. And so we're trying to get money in our communities so we can make sure that displaced fossil fuel workers and people excluded from the traditional economy, including women and BIPOC people, Black, Indigenous people of color, we all have a shot at making it. And our region is particularly impacted because we have been relying on coal, and we are relying in many ways on the fossil fuel economy, and that's just simply not sustainable. And so, we're here to win the win.
Well, one of the aspects of community benefits agreements, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is now that this money has been awarded and you're going to try and bring projects into your region, but then there's a role of negotiating with the funder to say, let's make sure these projects actually benefit the folks in our region. don't just throw money in here and maybe hire out of state folks to come in and build something and then they move off and get the money somewhere else. You want it to impact people in your region. You want to deal with those underserved populations. You want to see that that's done. So
Well,
what
also
are
they're required to pay living wage and
right?
use American made parts. I mean, who's monitoring that?
Well, and
Mhm.
that's where I assume you come in, where you
Yeah,
talk
that's where
about
this
these
all comes in.
community agreements, right? Community benefit.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a complicated process, so let's try to break it down, right? So in right now, there's, like I said, billions of dollars that are slowly grant opportunities that are being slowly released from the federal government, and that's across different departments and bureaus. So the Department of Labor has different grants, the Environmental Protection Agency has different grants, Department of Interior has different grants. And so we're trying to connect local elected officials, local governments, again, labor unions. We're trying to connect everyone in Appalachia to these grant opportunities, to the ones that we really think are going to make a difference, and hope that we have the capacity to apply for some of this funding, and that when it comes through, um, that we, again, as you said, make sure that this funding really helps communities. And what we're really looking for, and what community benefit agreements are, is that they're a negotiated agreement from a community, the public, in exchange for support for a private investment. And let me also add here something that's very interesting is that the Department of Labor, or sorry, Department of Energy, US Department of Energy, for all of their, well, for certain funding streams, for certain grant funding streams, they're actually requiring that a community benefit agreement plan is included as part of the application process. So they're scoring grant applications at least 20 points for the quality of a community benefit plan. So here's an example. There was actually uh, an example of an electric vehicle manufacturer that was produced. This is actually a multi-state agreement, and there were just a lot of negotiation with this private entity. They were going to build factories to produce these vehicles. And after a really long time of negotiation, they came up with a number of priorities. So, for example, well, this is now a legal agreement that 45% of new hires for these factories must come from historically disadvantaged groups that have had limited access to this kind of manufacturing. So that includes veterans, that includes women, that includes Black people in the region. So that's one type of thing that you can include in a community benefits agreement. Another one is that they must include pre-apprenticeship pathways to become apprentices on the job for certain labor unions. So they can actually, it's not just a job that you have for a few months and barely make minimum wage, that you are actually on a path to build a permanent career within this sector. So that was one other requirement. And that was just one example. I believe this was a New Flyer. New Flyer was the name of the private company. But I can name dozens more examples across the country where local governments and other entities, including faith-led groups, et cetera, that they have negotiated really fantastic agreements to say even the janitors that work here must make a family sustaining wage, right?
That's so
we
great.
don't we realize that we don't have to just take whatever breadcrumbs are given to us, that we actually have the power as people to negotiate for projects that work for us. We don't just have to be bystanders when
Mm.
companies get subsidies. Like, we shouldn't be subsidizing poverty, we shouldn't be subsidizing exclusion, we shouldn't be subsidizing hunger. We shouldn't be subsidizing out of state workers coming in and working in our plants and factories and roads and bridges and turbines and solar factories or EV factories. We need to make them work for us. So, yeah.
Well, how does that process work? Because you're saying that your organization represents about 100 or more organizations and businesses, it would seem they all have competing, goals and competing constituencies that they're trying to promote, and some of these may be across purposes. It seems a bit like herding cats to try and get everybody there to negotiate an agreement with the developer,
Hmm.
as part of this. So is there some process that you go through, or is this a one size does not fit all?
We're giving away magic wands to everybody who applies.
All right.
There you go.
Yeah. No, but better than a magic wand is ReImagine Appalachia. We're actually hosting a summit in May of 2023. If you want to go to reimagineappalachia.org, check out our events page. It may be on the front page at this point, but it's May 23rd and May 25th. Even if you're not from Appalachia, you're more than welcome to join us, but it's focused on Appalachia. We're hosting it with Fair Shake Legal Environmental Services. Uh, they are a legal practice that is helping create legal frameworks for these things. So we hope it's on virtual. And again, it's a Tuesday and a Thursday. And so we're going to cover the basics 101, right? What is a community benefits agreement? How is it beneficial? What are the best practices to do that? And we're going to get into it, right? Like we're going to get into the fact that this is hard, and it's not everybody singing around automatically and saying kumbaya, right? But it's possible because it's already happened in many places. And again, we have to look at best practices. And I always say we need to create our own best practices, right? Like we want to make Appalachia a model for the rest of the country and say, we're just not going to sit back and take it anymore of like what's given to us. We're going to negotiate on our own because we have the resources. We have the resources
Yep.
in terms of our people and in terms of the land. So we understand, and I'm just going to be blunt, right? Like we understand that uh, many Black people have been excluded for generations from labor unions, and that many women may not feel comfortable in the trades for many
Yeah.
reasons. We can go into
Yep.
that later, but we want to change that, right? And it's not going to change unless we have a conversation. So we want to make sure that we really focus on as each, we could say village or cluster villages or county or town or city leader um, thinks about taking the lead on this. How do we make sure local groups who have not been traditionally included are at the table? And how do we just sit down and roll up our sleeves and be real? Because I think we all have a mutual interest. I don't care what side of the political spectrum you are. I think we all have an interest in making sure that we're protecting the health, safety, and welfare of of our neighbors and of the people we may represent, whether that's being a coach of a little league or being on the parent teacher association. We want everybody at the table, and we think it's just really really exciting. So the first day is going to be a little bit about 101, and then the second day is actually we're going to have breakout groups. Right, we're going to have breakout groups with diverse groups of people and talk about what kind of elements can be included in a CBA, kind of like a menu of options, of just examples, right, to get people thinking and to get these diverse breakout groups start talking about these issues. So it's going to be a little bit of a blend of on the first day we're also going to talk about conflict resolution, very real conflict resolution. Because here's the thing, like if we don't get our act together as communities, we're going to be railroaded. Oh gosh, that was a terrible thing to say in wake of what's happening, but
No,
like
but it's true. It's true.
it's
So
true.
let me ask the question, because when you brought up about the conflict resolution, I was just trying to imagine how in where I live, Muskingum County, how it would even be possible
Mm,
to create. I can't even imagine what the first step would be, because let's say we
mhm,
said, let's go to the county commission, and then they'd be, well, we got a port authority. We don't have a port, but we got a port authority. We have all these people that have historically, their families have controlled the money and how it was
mhm,
spent. And in our end of the county, they didn't spend it there. And so I'm just trying to imagine, how would I begin? How would I
mhm.
even begin to make this
All right.
sort of happen? I know you got to have
Well,
a break, a break.
before you begin, before you begin on this and answer that question, you are listening to When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine with Jay and Annie Warmke, coming to you from Studio B, WOUB Radio in Athens, Ohio, reminding you it is indeed the end of the world as we know it.
Thank God.
Thank God. So I think Annie brings up an interesting point, because I know, in any kind of oppressed or repressed community, they're all like crabs in a bucket trying to keep the other one from climbing out, and so you get these folks who were traditionally, the big fish in a small pond, and they're going to tell us how this is done, so yeah, now resolve that conflict for us right now.
All right. Yeah, no, I understand. I should say that I am a former city council member in the city of Pittsburgh. I'm a two-term, 8-year city council member. So I am no stranger to this. The community that I represented, parts of the district that I represented were um, very marginalized from city conversations about, where development happens and where it doesn't. It did not happen in my district. And many of my communities were actively harmed, like actively harmed
Hmm.
by racism and discrimination. And so we have to acknowledge that. Um, and I get it. I get the frustration, like, and on a like internal, visceral level. And again, there's no magic answer, but what I would suggest, and what we're really excited about, is just to get as many people as to this summit as possible. I know that sounds like maybe kind of like advertising, but we're not selling anything except, you know, like making a difference in
Possibilities.
your community. Possibilities. Yeah.
Possibilities. You're selling
Yeah. We're
possibilities, which
selling
we have had a
possibilities.
very limited menu of in this part
Yeah.
of the world.
Open people's eyes. Like, we really just want to open people's eyes as to what's available, what other communities have been able to negotiate in terms of, a David and Goliath type of situation. So please go to reimagineappalachia.org. Check out our events page. Let me see. I believe it is under Join Us. If you go to the Join Us tab under
Yeah,
events.
we have a bunch of links that we'll drop in so
Yeah,
people
that'd be
can
great.
find all these different things that you're talking about.
Yeah,
And the
we're trying to
video.
get 300 to 400 people there. Like, let's just come in, come all. Let's be inspired by each other.
Mhm. So you had mentioned some of the things that you would like to mandate, some of the inclusiveness
Hmm.
that's there. Is there anything specific that you want to, that typically within these kind of agreements you prohibit? There's
Mm.
things you want happening, there are things you want to avoid, I guess, and then
Hmm.
I'd also look at how would you enforce these
Mm.
mandates, and what kind of accountability is there for the developer
Hmm.
when they're doing this. Those are all parts of your agreement, I'm sure, but different
Yes,
aspects of it.
those are excellent, excellent questions. And I'm going to be honest, something that both our environmental partners and our labor union partners have expressed concern about that too, right? So one of them prohibiting, for example, um, certain types of pollution. I know that's very vague, but it really depends on the circumstances. Um, for example, even um, limiting limiting traffic patterns, changing the way a project is developed, like literally on the ground. How is this going to look like? Where is it going to be? Um, so that could be part of it. And certainly, that's why we actually are partnering with Fair Shake Environmental Legal Services. It's because we want to make sure that this happens within a legal framework, and that we have some capacity on our end to help communities that may be struggling with enforcement. And so that is a step-by-step process. But again, we hope to have some legal resources for that. We will see.
Well, you're bringing labor unions, environmentalists, and lawyers all into the same room, so what could possibly go
Go
What could
wrong?
wrong.
go wrong? Everything's going to be fine. No, how
But you
exciting
know,
is that?
that's
Yeah.
right. Well, I don't like a fight. It's ugly. But the thing I was thinking about is there are so many issues as a woman and as a mother and a grandmother thinking about, if you're coming into my community and you want to set up a big factory, I would be advocating for childcare on site. I would be advocating for school buses that drop kids off at where I work. I'd be advocating for health care for the women that would be working in that place specific to women and not just any old thing that's thrown out there. Transportation, a lot of women are held back, particularly in Appalachia, because they don't have reliable or can afford reliable transportation. And so where's the transport going to come from? I just think there are so many incredible issues. And I knew immediately when I saw the Reduction Act and how it applied to renewable energy, and when they were talking about paying a living wage and using American parts, and I said, who's doing this? This is not the conventional group or person lobbying. And so I think the work you're doing is really exciting, but I just don't know how we make it happen. Like you say, the win-win, because
Winning the win.
winning the win or win-win. The thing is, I just have spent too many years of my life in social justice looking at what has to be torn apart and absolutely destroyed before we can put something in its place. I do believe we're in a place to do that right now because we have so many things that have fallen apart, but we got to hurry up and get those things in the hole that's created before the big boys come along and fill it up with the same old crap.
Well, I understand that Reimagining Appalachia is also working in the program that's near and dear to your heart about bringing women into the workforce, bringing women into the trades. And this is part of perhaps the negotiated settlement, but it's also outside of that realm as well. So what are you guys working on there to that focuses on women within Appalachia?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So March is Women's History Month, but of course we want to bring women out of history into modern times.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So that includes getting more women into the trade. So um, we uh, we are really trying to promote apprenticeship opportunities for women. Um, we have so many leaders in our coalition who are women, including, like, let's be honest, like when you think of farmers and you think of laborers and you think of bricklayers and you think of operating engineers, the people who control cranes, and you think of farmers, who comes to your mind? It's probably an image of a man. And we need to change that. We truly need to change that. And if I would say if there are any, I don't know how many teenage girls may be listening to this, or parents of young girls, um, we're trying to really spread the word about careers in the trades, that this is work that women can absolutely do. They need to hear that they can do. They need to see other tradeswomen doing this and other farmers doing this, other women in agriculture doing this. And so we're really trying to promote that through our coalition, that women can support their families and build the life that they seek. If they call their, like, seriously, like, call their local labor hall and say, hey, what are your programs? What are your apprenticeship programs?
Mm-hmm.
How do I get in there? And there are other organizations that do this. Let's see if I can find one of
Well, let
our,
me tell you while you're
yeah.
looking, I want to give a shout out to a group that I work closely with and called Women Food and Agriculture Network. And they're actually out of Iowa, but we've been bringing them to Ohio, to Appalachia for the last couple of years. And they have a mentoring program called Harvesting Our Hope. It's called HOP. And anyway, it doesn't matter. It's a mentoring program, and they pay people, women, to be mentors, women who are managing or own a farm, and then they pay the mentee, they call it, over a period of, it's like, could be 6 to 8 weeks, and so everybody gets paid, not every hour you're working, but it's a token that says what you're providing is valuable. And the statistics show what happens when someone has a mentor or has the opportunity to be an apprentice. It's a game changer for that person, and particularly for women, because we don't have that in our everyday life. We don't even watch films that show us how those things happen, where they're not available. So I think it's really valuable if you're interested in being mentored or you want to offer an apprenticeship. I think we're obligated to step up to the plate and make a place where we can do that if we're business owners and say, all right, we're doing well. What else could we do a little more by mentoring or offering apprenticeship? It's a sermon I give quite often, because I just see in our own business that the outcome is unbelievable. It's always winning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we need just more examples of successful people doing the thing.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to give a shout out. One of the groups that we work with is called Trades Futures. And so their website is tradesfutures.org. And they actually have a map on their website. If you go to About and go to the apprenticeship map, and they have maps of all the apprenticeship opportunities throughout the US.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. So we really encourage folks to take a look at that
Well,
because,
Natalia,
yeah, right.
in the last minute that we have, why don't you just let us know what else is going on that you want to get in the last 60 seconds?
60 seconds. I work also really closely with an amazing group of faith leaders, multi-faith leaders, and we're actually, you had asked about how do we get above the divisiveness within within some of these groups or across some of these groups, and we really believe that faith leaders can be integral to that conversation and rise above the divisiveness and be kind of moral authorities in this space. So. Please, if you're a person of faith or a leader of faith or want to invite your pastor or colleague, please join us at this summit. We welcome you.
I have one other thing I want to give you a compliment on, in that on your website, you have a really great list that you've pulled of grants that are out there right now that the government is providing. And it's a great way to kind of hunker down and look at what's possible. And then hopefully people will find something there for their community or their business.
Okay, well,
Yes, please.
you have been listening. Oh, you're out of time. You've been listening to When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine with Jay and Annie Warmke, coming to you from Studio B, WOUB Radio in Athens, Ohio. We've mentioned a lot of links here in this program. Those will be on the show notes with our video that you can find at bluerockstation.com.
Or YouTube.
At YouTube, yeah, the YouTube channel. And anyway, so we want to thank our guest here today, Natalia Rudiak. Thank you very much, Natalia. And we want to thank our always community-minded, Emmy Award-winning producer, Adam
That poor
Rich.
guy.
I know, he's abused. And we want to thank you for spending just a little bit of time with us. And as your grandmother hopefully told you, the secret to a happy and sustainable life is...
I have no idea. No, I do.
Yeah,
Eat your veggies, clean up your own mess, and be nice to others.
all right. Until next time. Bye-bye.